Hello everyone and welcome back to World and Economica, Make Believe, where we're playing World and Economica. Last time we had Yoshiharu trying to get a apology gift for Hagana, and he tried to ask Chris for help. But with Hagana showing up, he had to leave, and once he got back, he found he ended up helping Lisa out. And as she was a bit stressed with her situation, she let him know what's going on with the money lending and how she owes a lot of money soon. Yoshiharu was pondering the chance of him giving his money and starting back from zero, basically. Which would be really nice, especially if he opened up to them and had Hagana help him getting back up. But we'll have to see how that develops. So that being said, let's get started. Before Lisa came out of the bath, I went back to my own room and turned on the laptop. On the screen, the trading window was open. Cash balance 72,610 moles. Okay. So he has more than 50,000. He would still have some left for himself for a bit. You know, the money that would give him being able to live out until he can build everything up again. For someone working in a top company in this lunar city, it might have been peanuts. But for everyone else, it was a fair sum of money. I had built this up from the 2,000 moles I had on hand originally. Pretty impressive. From 2,000 to 72,000. Every day into night, concentrating without eating or drinking. Literally building it up with dogged determination. Taking out 50,000 moles would leave me with 220, what? What is up with my brain? 22. Oh, the red light that came up. Those numbers made me want to throw up. When I don't even want to spend a few dozen moles, was there a need for me to give 50,000 moles for someone else's sake? Just what did Lisa mean to me? Well, she's very, very close to you. And yeah, she's not, of course. I owed her for saving me from the police. True, there was that incident, but that was it. If you're talking in very give and take, I guess, but I feel like there's much more between you two than that. Even though I'm living here, I'm probably paying for that, right? So even though Lisa really was in trouble, there was absolutely no reason why I had to part with my own money. And yet, you consider it. On top of that, Lisa had a way of paying back the debt. And you're well aware of how much it would pain her. And me personally too. That's called sympathy and empathy. I forget which one. I guess empathy? Sell the old books in her room. That would be all it took. Despite all this, I couldn't shake the mental image of Lisa being that exhausted. For the first time, I learned that watching someone have to part with something truly dear to them could be physically painful for the watchers themselves. Look at you learning empathy. And that was why I stared at the laptop screen, unable to move. In my hands was a way to rescue Lisa from her plight. Furthermore, I even had a reason to give it to her. She had said that after selling those books, she would never be able to get her hands on them again. But in my case, that wasn't true. You would be able to build up that money again. If my investment methods were truly great, if they bring me results befitting my dreams, then giving away 50,000 moles wouldn't be one bit of a problem. Just grow the remaining amount like crazy. A few years later, 50,000 moles would be merely something to sneeze at. With the 2,000 moles I had, I grew it 35 times to 70,000 moles in 3 months. If I had in 3 months, wow, impressive. If I had faith in the correctness of my ways, then I shouldn't be feeling this hesitation at handing over 50,000 moles. That means that the thing making me hesitate was either wretched stinginess or a lack of faith in my investment methods. Oof. So yeah, the reason why he's not doing it right now yet, it's either the stinginess, his pride, selfishness, so a personality problem, or a lack of confidence in his abilities. Which both very bad. I was supposed to have decided that if I couldn't fulfill my dreams, there'd be no point in me living. Oh wow, you were going that far, huh? And yet, even though I was on the verge of declaring that I could not fulfill my dreams, I was losing my nerve. If I couldn't just casually pop off the 50,000 moles, then it'd be all a lie. I'd be a liar. In front of the laptop, I tightened my hands into fists. I ground my teeth at just how pathetic I was. It was enough to make me want to cry. Are you really that small a person? Some punk who only knows how to pick up pennies, Yoshiharu? Come on. I berated myself with those insults. I looked up and looked listlessly around the room. So much that you think the right answer was hidden somewhere in there. No, I knew what the right answer was. I just didn't have the guts to take the plunge. And then, when my line of sight fell on the divider between this room and the next, I recalled Hagana. Hagana had the courage to take the plunge. She had the courage to say, "Buy me." Moreover, saying it not like some sheltered, self-centered brat, but as someone who had really been sold from Earth. As someone who knew exactly what it meant to be sold. She had the courage to step into that hell once more. But Lisa would never accept that. Hagana probably really felt that if only Lisa could be saved, then whatever happened to Hagana herself was acceptable. I thought, compared to Hagana's trouble, my dilemma was a luxury, right? I recall the exchange we had in the living room when I had thought to make peace with her. We're doing all we can to survive. Hagana's words struck me once more in the chest. Was I doing all that I could to survive? Was I doing things to the limit of my abilities? Oh, that was an interesting sight. Wish I could have seen more of that. That was the moment. That was when I remembered the investment contest. Prize money. Dashing to the Economic Research Center's homepage, I logged in and looked at the summary. For the top-ranking people, there were prizes. First got 200,000 moles. Second got 50,000. And third got 30,000, while fourth and fifth each had 20,000. Okay, here's the plan. You give the 50,000 to Lisa to help her out, and then you get Hagana to help you out so you can at least get second place and recover what you lost. But hopefully first place. Getting second would be wonderful, and even third would be a great help. But what moved my heart was the existence of the investment contest itself. Even if I lost at the contest, it wouldn't affect my wealth. The contest was like a free lottery. On top of that, there was an important thing. A very important thing. I once again looked up and turned around. A wall was there, dividing this room from the next. Past that, Hagana was surely crying. Yeah, everyone here in this household is in a tense situation, huh? Yours, it feels like the least one. Like, Yoshiharu is having this doubt between the funds for his dream, his lack of confidence, and helping out Lisa. Lisa's having the whole doubt and selling her old books. And also Hagana's situation. Like, everyone's very tense right now. She must be there, blaming herself and crying over how she couldn't do anything for her beloved Lisa. Hagana clumsily bumbled her way through haggling as a way of thanking me. And when I told her how her haggling stunk, she was so angry she practically kicked my leg off and cried. Some of that must have been her base personality. But now that I thought about it, she might not have had any room to grieve. For example, even if she could teach kids math, she wasn't helping them advance to better schools in any real sense if she was unable to change the economic circumstances surrounding them. Hagana had probably been thrown around by conditions like that, brought to the moon, then wound up at Lisa's place after running away. Apparently, math could solve problems elegantly, and you sure know how. However, Hagana came here without solving a single real-world problem. In Toyama's way of saying things, like a chick that hadn't even broken its shell. With respect to Hagana, the investment contest was a big opportunity. Hagana would be of help to Lisa, and I would be able to clear Hagana's misunderstanding. See? Plus, if it all went well, then we'd all be happy. I grabbed the laptop, flew out of my room, and headed to the living room. The living room had returned to silence, and Lisa wasn't around. I imagine after the bath she went back to her room. Immediately turning around and running down the hall, I headed up the steep stairs to the second floor. I see. So, Yoshiharu is gonna give her the money, right? Along the way, I saw the light on Lisa's room. Without hesitation and without knocking, I opened the door to Lisa's room. Surprised, Lisa turned around. She was in the middle of taking a few books from the shelf. Oh, don't tell me you were just separating them to sell them, please. Her hair was still damp, and her eyes were red and puffy. Yeah, I can imagine that. She looked like a girl who lost her way on a rainy day. I didn't want to see Lisa with such a face. That's why I opened the laptop and shoved the screen in dazed Lisa's face. There is a way. Lisa sniffled like a kid. I want you to convince Hagana. Huh? I want to borrow her talents. Okay, so you're getting Lisa to help you out. So you could, a full circle here. You help Lisa, and Lisa help you with Hagana, so that I explained everything to Lisa. 10 minutes later, both of us were knocking on Hagana's door. Okay, so he explained the whole situation. Awesome. Oh, in 1 second, I just remembered. There we go. Hagana, are you awake? Lisa asked in a small voice. If she had exhausted herself from crying and fell asleep, we could just wait until morning. Whatever painful things may happen, things always became more manageable if you could get past the dark night. So it was brighter after the dark. By that logic, she would be calmer tomorrow, and broaching the subject to her, then it might have been better. That's what I was thinking. But after Lisa knocked on the door and called out, she put her ear by the door softly. At that moment, her expression changed, as if she had heard a horrifying, revolting sound, like the scraping of metal on metal. Oh boy, what's Hagana doing in there? Before I could ask, Lisa put her hand on the doorknob and turned it slowly. She opened the door quietly, as if something in the room would be damaged with the slightest shock. The door slowly opened, and the light from the hallway flowed into the dark room. Lisa opened the door, but didn't try to enter the room immediately. I thought it was odd, but quickly saw the reason. Hagana's room was even barer than the one I had rented out, and it was completely dark. But within that dark room, there was a place where the darkness was even darker. What the light fell upon was blackness. A black, darker than darkness. A sight to which I didn't know what to say, didn't know what to think. A sickening taste filled my mouth. What is that dark space? Is that like Hagana all curled up or something? Since she has black hair, black clothes, and everything. In a corner of the room, Hagana was hugging her knees and crying. Yup, I was right. Oh, girl. Hagana. When Lisa finally called her name, Hagana's body shook like an absolutely terrified child. Hagana, I have something to talk about. There was no further reaction to Lisa's word. It seemed like she was trying to shrink her already slender body down even more, hugging her knees desperately and burying her face in them. From the looks of it, instead of crying out of sadness, it seemed more like she was crying out of anger. Squeeze down. Shrink even more. If only I just didn't exist in the first place. That was the kind of anger I felt from her. Hagana. Lisa spoke softly and slowly stepped forward. It wasn't a big room, so she was in front of Hagana in a moment. Hagana's body quivered, then changed positions. I had thought it was impossible for her to get smaller, but she pulled her feet in tightly, pulled her head down more, and then moved her arms from her knees up to cover her head. So Hagana was shaking so much that I could see it all the way from the door. Lisa's profile hardened, harder than if you shouted any insult in the world at her. Lisa was furious. But she wasn't angry at Hagana. Just by looking at Hagana, I could understand, in a way. She was in the corner of the dark room, protecting her head, visibly shaking. No matter how angry Lisa was, Hagana should have known that there was no need to be this afraid. Even Chris, of all people, probably hadn't been this terrified. Hagana had lived a life where she had to tremble in the corner, protecting her head if she made any sort of mistake. Hagana hadn't raised her head and didn't seem to realize that the person in front of her was Lisa. She simply continued to apologize, so desperately the words wouldn't come out. What Lisa was probably angry at was the rain of misfortune that had come down upon Hagana. Lisa crouched down in front of the terrified Hagana, sensing that Hagana flinched back. Even though there was nowhere left to retreat, she pulled back. Lisa gently grasped Hagana's thin wrists and then wrapped her hands around her shaking fingers. Oh, look at this one. I don't know which one to use for the thumbnail, though I guess you guys already know the answer. Hagana, it's okay. It's alright. Whoa, it's alright. Everything's gonna be alright. Gently putting her head against Hagana's, Lisa whispered over and over. It seemed like each time Hagana said that she was sorry, Lisa would say that it was alright. Calm down, she murmured softly in Hagana's ear. Somehow, she even seemed to be smiling in enjoyment. Hagana was making sobbing sounds. Lisa didn't rush. Eventually, Hagana's small head moved. Her teary eyes peered through her disheveled hair. Hagana, do you know who I am? Lisa asked. Hagana stared at Lisa with a teary, exhausted face. Eventually, with fresh tears overflowing her eyes, she nodded slowly. That's a good girl. Saying that, Lisa embraced Hagana's head. I'm sorry. Hagana repeated herself again, but not in the childlike way she had before. It was a clearer, more well-defined thing. Okay, Hagana. To be honest, your elbow really hurt. The bruise on Lisa's face was apparently from Hagana's elbow. She must have struck with quite a bit of force. But that was something like an accident. I'm not angry. But it's true. And that I don't approve of going to Mr. Toyama without thinking about the consequences, along with what you did there. Hagana felt silent, but it was different from when she had been terrified. While she was in Lisa's arm, the fact that Hagana wanted to make an excuse was apparent even to me. Thanks to the situation, even Lisa smiled wryly as she held Hagana. But that was something you did for me, right? Lisa asked as she once again embraced Hagana. The darkly dressed small girl in Lisa's arms nodded repeatedly, like a heartbeat. Those feelings make me happy. Very much so. Hagana looked up, and Lisa met her gaze full on with a smile. Hagana had calmed down, for the most part, but now, once again, burst into tears. Lisa cradled Hagana's head gently against her chest. Hagana, Hal's by the door. If you cry too much, he's going to notice. I saw her shrink down in Lisa's arm. You're using me for that? I glared at Lisa, but she only winked at me out of the corner of her eyes. I guess that's a way to make her stop crying? Unable to object, I hid myself by the side of the door. And also, Hal's got a few things he wants to talk to you about. You shouldn't say that. Wow, I could not hear what Hagana said. I couldn't hear it, but apparently Lisa heard something. It was probably something like she had nothing to say to me anyway. Okay, so I guess this really is all from Yoshiharu's perspective. So he can't hear it, I can't know what is being said. I heard that you said terrible things about Hal. He was really hurt by that. While explaining the investing contest and the possibility of using Hagana's talent in math, I had also told that whole story. If she thought that I was some worthless punk who never worked and stole money from houses, this whole plan wouldn't even stand up, not to mention my pride. However, I was silently cheering on Lisa to say more. Hagana should learn that her words could hurt other people. Plus, I heard that all of that was a misunderstanding on your part. Lies. That word I could clearly hear. Right after, I heard Lisa laughing lightly. Hagana, you're surprisingly childish. You know that. Lisa was very good at jabbing at a person's pride. Just maybe, I might not have to sell my books. What? Thanks to Hal. From the sound of cloth rustling, I knew that Hagana had raised her head. Along the way, you could almost hear the sound of her face scrunching up at Lisa's words. Hal seems to be working properly. Well, I wonder if it's called work. I don't really get it, but in any case, he's earning money. Quite a bit of it. Really? Really? Even I'm a bit surprised. It was quite a bit of money. So it seems Hal was afraid and didn't say anything. Well, it makes sense. If you can't trust Hal, then he can't trust you. Do you understand what I'm saying? When I peeked in the room, Lisa was combing Hagana's hair with her fingers while caressing Hagana's stubborn face. But Hal said that he lent us the money he worked hard to gather, under certain circumstances. A whole 50,000 wolves, you know? At Lisa's words, Hagana made a pained face. Hagana had thought that she was unable to gather that sort of money by herself and had no choice but to sell herself. But, as you know, Hal's got that rather level-headed personality. So, there are conditions. It's that you lend him your skills. Huh? Hagana was clearly surprised. Her eyes had been on the verge of sleep as Lisa brushed her hair, but now they were wide open. Do you understand? Hao is saying that he wants to borrow your skills. Mine? Yes, your skills at math. If Hagana had been quite literally purchased from the earth and brought here for her math abilities, then the proposal was a very awkward one. Yeah, because he's basically buying her to help him out. But I had absolutely no intention of saying I wanted to buy her powers. He's indirectly doing that. Lisa had also confirmed that point very thoroughly with me. It seems that he had wanted to say it much sooner, but he got furious, shouted, and kicked him in the leg, so he couldn't say it. Hagana sulked childishly and looked down. Lisa left, and her gaze drifted up while still keeping her head down. I don't think there's any other conditions than that. Hagana, someone truly needs your one best skill. And that would save Lisa, and moreover be useful to me, and probably would even save Hagana herself. Yeah, look how perfect that is. It would help all three of them. If her skills in math could bring success in trading, then Hagana would have found a way to make money for herself. It was the same as obtaining a tool to solve many of the problems that caused her all this pain for so long. Hagana slowly looked up when Lisa called her name. What would I do? What? There, Lisa's words hesitated. Inside, I was a bit exasperated, but Lisa didn't seem very knowledgeable about the sort of thing, so there was no helping it. How? Lisa called out. As I sat next to the door frame with my back to the wall, I answered her. What? Explain things to Hagana, please. At Lisa's words, I half rose, then stopped short. Does that mean I can go over there? Hagana probably didn't want me to see her teary face. Lisa laughed a bit at me when I asked her the question, as it contained a bit of self-deprecation. How about it, Hagana? Lisa asked the question, and apparently Hagana whispered something in her ear. After a bit of whispering, Lisa answered. Can you wait just 10 minutes? What? When I replied, Lisa left some words with Hagana before standing up. Then, sticking her head out the room, she looked down at me and spoke. A lady needs time to be presentable. Is that so? Just wait a minute, okay? Still seated, I dropped my shoulders and made to go back to my room while shaking my head. Lisa called out to me from behind. Al? Now what? Thank you. Saying that, when I turned my head around, Lisa then popped back into the room. For a while, I continued to stand looking backwards. It's not like we had solved any issues this very moment. But, even then, the rundown and rusty gears seemed to start moving together again. Whether they end up turning smoothly, no one knew. However, as I returned to my room, a lightness was in my chest. Of course, you did a good action, my man. You helped Lisa out, you're helping Hagana with her problem, and with that, you're also helping yourself. Lisa called for me 10 minutes later, and I went out to the living room. I'm sorry. Those were the first words said to me the instant I returned to the living room and faced Hagana with a table between us. Words that I don't think we ever heard Hagana say in this whole game. It was so sudden, I forgot to breathe. Her eyes still had some traces of her crying, and her lips were still somewhat sullenly tight with stubbornness. Hagana didn't look at me and stared at the table, but I clearly heard her say she was sorry. when I looked at Lisa haltingly, she had a satisfied smile on her face. I apologize. When Hagana finally opened her mouth, that was what came out. Lisa's smiling face remained frozen that way, but I was more relieved at those words. I heard. When I said that, she finally looked at me. That usual piercing gaze was the same, but the sharp, stray cat-like suspicion wasn't there. It was more like a kid who was being stubborn and on a brave face. So, Hal, you're fine with this too, right? It's good. I shrugged. Well, then, can you explain things more concretely? I didn't really get it with just one run-through. With that embarrassed laugh, she probably really didn't understand this stuff very well. But even if that were true, then that meant that Lisa trusted me despite not really grasping what I had said. It's not difficult. Win the investing contest, get you 100,000 moles. When I said it that directly, Hagana's eyes went so wide they looked almost round. There's that thing called stock investing, right? In a simulation of that, compete with other people, and the guy who earns the most wins. First prize is 200,000 moles. Second, it's 50,000. So we just have to get second, right? Third place gets 30,000 moles, which I'd be thankful for. Lisa pressed her lips together lightly, then urged me with her hands to go on. But I don't know anything about stocks. Hagana was the one who interrupted. She was glaring at me bravely, but I saw that she was uneasy. Somehow, once you noticed these inconsistencies, Hagana really did seem unsteady and fragile. You're smart, aren't you? But it seemed that she had the strength left to handle my jabs. Compared to you, Brett. Hagana? Lisa gave a small warning. Choking off her words with a small... She looked at Lisa. She then looked at me. Compared to you. How? Then there's no problem, because the rules are very simple. Really? Lisa was the one who asked. The basic idea is to buy a stock when it's low and sell when it's high. Simple, right? Both Lisa and Hagana looked at each other quickly, then turned and looked at me at the same time. That's really all there is. Of course, there's a way to sell high and buy back when it's low too. But that stuff's for later. Right now, the base of our talk lies elsewhere. As I spoke, I worked with the laptop and drew up a stock displaying its trading info. It was the most famous company on the moon, Emerald Industries. If you look at the stocks closely, it boils down to one thing. This company's stock, let's say tomorrow, the day after, or even the next few minutes. In any case, sometime in the future, if you can predict that it will be higher or lower, then you'll be able to profit from it. Spinning the laptop around, I sat in front of Lisa and Hagana. Lisa looked like she was getting a headache just from glancing at the numbers and graphs. Hagana peered intently at it, like a cat peering into a mirror. There's a number of places to get clues. Leaning over, I turned the laptop halfway towards myself. Hagana looked at me, then at the laptop. First, Hal, why don't you come over here? Well, isn't it hard to explain like that? Both, I'm guessing Hal is on one side of the table while Lisa and Hagana on the other. So Lisa is suggesting them switch places so that he would be sitting beside Hagana. Saying that, she got up from her chair, walked to the other side of the table, that is to say, my side, and sat next to me. I'm just absolutely no good at this stuff, Lisa said with true distaste. For some weirdo who came to the moon to learn about religious history, she probably didn't mix well with the moon's colony's biggest alchemic art. At the very least, listen. As I spoke, I got off my chair and went to where Lisa had been sitting. For an instant, I was thinking Hagana might object, but she paid me no heed and continued looking at the information display. Those blackout eyes of her, with the laptop screen's white light reflected in them, shone like jewels. When I sat next to her, I spun the laptop towards us. Drawn by that, Hagana's face followed it as if she really were a cat. As if she had only now realized where I was, she gave me a brief glance before turning back to the screen. Okay, stocks have a price. Weekdays from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., they're traded. When there are lots of buyers, the price obviously go up. When there are a lot of sellers, it goes down. Obviously. Right, but it's hard to predict that obvious thing. Hagana's eyes were wide with curiosity and looked steadily at me. Why? Because no one really knows whether that company would make a profit or not. Stocks are essentially a piece of ownership of a company. If you buy up all the stocks that a company issues, then you'd become the owner of the company. If the company makes a profit and you control the company, then it's silly if you don't become rich, right? That's why the stock of a profitable company goes up. And if they don't profit, it falls. Exactly. However, whether a company is profitable every single day, no one, not even the company's workers, know. Take Emerald Industries, for example. On the moon and the Earth, they have around 300,000 workers. If you add in their partners, there's a million. To know every last transaction they make, it's impossible. Then, what do we do? Don't know. Everyone guesses and trades. Hagana looked up from the laptop and glared at me. What do you mean, don't know? We're just guessing here? That's the help you wanted? Lies. It's true. But then... Hagana said that, then looked back at the screen, then back at me. Everyone's betting money on this, aren't they? Yep. That's why they're guessing very seriously. When Lisa, sitting across the table, heard this, she gave a little laugh. There's a number of ways to guess. One is to research the company and decide whether it's profitable or not. This Emerald Industry is the only company that can repair the space elevators. Every year, a huge amount of money is sure to come in. On top of that, they're involved in much of the development of the lunar surface. It's an ultra top-ranked company. They also made the dome. That was from when we went to buy clothes. That's right, you guys were talking about the dome. When I thought about her remembering that conversation, it made me a bit happy. Yup, they also made the Choose Skies. Amazing. Yes, it's an amazing company, and everyone thinks it will be profitable. Then we just have to buy this. Basically. But it's obvious that it's profitable. So everyone buys it. When everyone buys it, the price goes up. When that's the case, the price can go up past the price where it should be. See? There's a PE here. Yeah. What's PE again? If stock is ownership of the company, and if a company had 100 shares, then one share would be worth about 100 of the company. Yes. Now, the profit of that company divided among the shares would give an indication of whether the share price was high or not. I played with the laptop screen and enlarged the selected part. If one share of a company was earning only 10 moles, but the stock price was 1 million moles, while another company was earning only 10 moles, but priced at 20 moles, which would you buy? Wait, if a company was only 10 moles, but the stock price... Okay, yeah. Lisa was already clutching her head in her seat. Yeah, I had to take a moment to process that, Lisa, don't worry. Meanwhile, Hagana felt the slightest hint of doubt, looked at me directly, and spoke. The 20 mole stock. Right. For the amount of money paid out, the amount of money earned is different. No matter how great the company, if the stock price continues climbing faster than the profits, then we'll inevitably hit an inappropriate price. And I'm supposed to predict that? With math? Nope. When I said that, Hagana's brows furrowed. It probably seemed like I was being spiteful, or explaining things in a roundabout way. But I was sure Hagana didn't feel as upset as she looked. For some reason, I just felt that. But now, you got a sense of what stocks are, right? Just the parts you explain. How? Hagana decided to change her tone halfway through on her own. Lisa had on an extremely happy smile, and of course, Hagana didn't miss that. She made little embarrassed glances at Lisa, but Lisa got up from her chair. She looked back at me in relief. So, in general, predicting a stock involves deciding whether it will be profitable or not. But, like I said before, no one knows what's going on every day, let alone next month, next year. There have been ultra top ranked companies that had an accident, paid a definitely amount of compensation, and went out of business. That happens quite a bit. That's why everyone uses different methods of predicting. Math? Aha, calm down. When I laughed, Hagana made a face like I had flicked her nose with my finger. Then she came back to herself and glared at me. From the pout on her lips, she was saying that was embarrassing. If I don't explain some other things first, it's hard to explain why. At my words, Hagana hesitated a little, but eventually nodded. This here is the graph of a stock price. Returning to the information page, I indicated the zigzagging line in the center of the screen. Every day, the stock price is plotted and the points are connected. They call these charts. It's so choppy. Exactly, but because Emerald Industry is profitable, it's overall going up in value. Yeah. For other companies, it doesn't work that way. For example, this one, or this, and so on. Yeah. So there's as many graphs as there are kinds of stocks and times of trade. Thousands of stocks, decades of time. And so, some bored fellow noticed one day. In the center of that chart, there's a few distinctive things. Hagana stared at me, then looked at the chart on the screen. The most famous one would be this head and shoulders thing. See how in the center there's a mountain, and on both sides there are small mountains? Isn't it like a person's head and shoulders? Somewhat. When this shape comes up, the big mountain is often the peak for the price, and in the future, the chances it's going to slide down are high. Really? That's what they say. Don't get mad. I'm saying that from looking at past charts. There's a way to predict what will happen in the future. Hagana looked like a kid used to being tricked and being very cautious, but she managed to nod. It was there that Lisa, who had stood up from her chair to do something by the sink, came over with cocoa. Oh, she's leaving some hot chocolate for them, huh? Anyway, the method of predicting this or that with a graph uses a form of math. For example, Hagana's expression changed. Now we're finally talking about math. See how there's a smooth line between the jagged ones? That's also a stock price? That's called a moving average. For example, if you start on May 1st, and from there take the last 30 days of price, and then plot the average. Then, next to it, on May 2nd, you take the last 30 days of price and plot that. When you do that, the line becomes quite smooth. Yeah. Even if the daily movements are really zigzaggy, when you average them like this, you can sort of tell whether it's overall going up, down, or sideways. And there's a way of trading where you trust in those big movements. If the big line is trending upwards, then it feels like it's going to go up forever, doesn't it? Hagana looked at the graph and nodded sincerely. So, there's a way of trading where guys with too much time on their hands look at charts of companies over the days, and by looking at the moving average, predict whether things will go up or down. That kind of calculation isn't hard. I'm supposed to do that? Well, you could, but given enough time, even I could do that. Analyzing charts was apparently the first thing beginners in stocks do. When you open an account, you can use a tool that has tons of famous charts analyzing tools built into it for free. But before I started trading, I tried using it for a few things and was sure that none of them was useful. So the thing that I wanted you to try to do is one step beyond this stuff. Beyond? Like Bath, Bad, and Beyond? Yeah. Did you ever see the space elevator service diagrams? Hagana blinked at my question. The space elevators? Yeah, that thing shows predictions about whether trash would strike it, right? Yeah. Physics can predict to insane accuracy the movement of a tiny lump that's flying around in orbit at a few tenths of kilometers a second. It's predicting the future, right? I don't really know about physics, but probably yes. If that's the case, there seems to be some that think that we might be able to predict the movement of stock prices with math, just like with heavenly bodies. Hagana looked quietly at me, and then at the screen. So, essentially, find formulae that draw this graph? Exactly. Whether it's possible, I don't know. However, in the world, there are those who make a huge profit with such a method. Can it be done? Hagana's question was natural. Even myself, I was half believing, half doubting. However, it was better than doing nothing. Infinitely better. Even if we didn't know whether we'd reach our destination, as long as we didn't move, we'd never get there. And so, keep moving forward. Because of that, I myself ran away from my home village. I don't know. When I answered, Hagana grimaced and looked at me. Feeling Hagana's gaze on my cheek, I looked at the screen and spoke. But it's not about whether we can or can't. Huh? We have no choice but to do it. In the corner of my eye, I could see that Hagana was stunned. Her mouth tried to move and say something, but words didn't form, and her lips just chilled the air. Besides, the price is 200,000 moles. No entry fee. Is there a reason we shouldn't participate? Hagana had been lamenting over how her strength at math was so powerless at solving real-world problems. This investing contest would definitely become a tiny lead to Hagana's finding a way forward. And also, can I mention this music, the soundtrack here? We've been through this whole scene and I did not say anything about it. Of course, I would reap rewards myself. Well, look at me, she held her breath. From there, she looked at the computer screen out of the corner of her eye, looked back at me, back at the computer screen, back at me, back at the computer screen. Her face was frozen stiff, like she had been left in the mother of all freezers. However, Hagana was staring at me. Those black eyes kept looking steadily at me. The moon wasn't a nice, friendly place that cared people who didn't try to walk on their own feet. However, those who tried could have their hands held. I gazed back to Hagana. And then Hagana said this. Out of 5,421, what? I had managed to drive all the way to the 3,227th. There wasn't one I couldn't solve. It took a full 10 seconds to realize she was talking about the math theorems that she had continued to derive in her room for the longest time. Hagana spent that time with determination. Or perhaps For a girl who had been sold to the moon, it took that much courage. Therefore, it should be solvable. Lisa had said that Hagana was a serious girl. I had thought that she was just stubborn, but when I realized that Hagana was clutching her fists fiercely beneath the table, I accepted Lisa's words. It should be solvable. Hagana repeated that and closed her eyes. I sensed strength in that pose, because I knew just how defiant Hagana was. When she opened her eyes, Hagana took a clearer step forward. Teach me all the rules. Accepting those words, I answered. You got it. I had this feeling that Lisa, who had sat on the sofa after making the cocoa, was smiling as she watched us. Okay, I feel like we're gonna stop here. This has been very good. We're finally moving forward with everyone here. Everyone is having a brighter tomorrow. Lisa not having to worry about the debt. Hagana actually getting some self-confidence and helping Yoshiharu and using her beloved math. Yoshiharu actually being nice and kind to other people and finding a way to help him with his investment contest. Like, this is the start. I think we're going up from here. It's amazing. This is the start of something very good. But that's for next time. So with that being said, see you next time. Bye.